Okay, guys, apologies for the delay. Was waiting for the institute's call for the other students. Let's get started without any further ado, guys. I think it's already 8:15 or so. Okay. So before we do so, a quick formal introduction on my end, guys. My name is Mohammed Shoaib. I will be your cybersecurity trainer for the entire duration of this course. Okay. And I've been training with DURGASOFT for the last 3-4 years, I suppose. And again, I've been in this domain for the last 7 years. I've been working in cybersecurity. Started as a penetration tester, then shifted slowly towards web application pen testing. My expertise is in web application pen testing. And I also have my experience on security operations centers, so with tools like Splunk and Alien Vault and Curator, IBM Curator. Okay. Now, the course that is taken up by students usually to get into this domain of cybersecurity is called Certified Ethical Hacking. That's the first fundamental course that you always take up to understand what cybersecurity is, to understand what hacking is, what ethical hacking is, okay, and what you do as a cybersecurity professional in an organization. Okay. And this course is provided by an organization called EC Council, one of the most well recognized organizations in the world, very well known for certifications in the same domain of cybersecurity. Okay. Now, when we talk about this course, Certified Ethical Hacking, it runs on version 13 currently, the latest version. Every few years, this version gets updated, and the latest tools and techniques or the latest cyber trends are added in this course, and the older ones are again redacted outside. Okay. So, yeah, let's get started without any further ado. And before we do so, any questions or doubts before we get into the demo, guys? If you have any, you can let me know. Please do not hesitate to ask me questions. If you have anything to ask, do not hesitate, and you can interrupt me at any certain point and ask your questions. Okay. Uh, Ashish, any questions? Mallikarjuna, any questions? Mukesh, any questions before we get started?
No, sir.
Right. So yeah, let's get started, guys. So we'll start with the. Oh yeah, Mallikarjuna, you say.
Yeah, nothing.
Right. So now we'll start with the definition, guys. So a lot of students have a misconception that hacking and ethical hacking are one and the same. So let's clear that up first. Okay. So when we talk about hacking, guys, this is the procedure of trying to gain access to information systems. What I mean by that is if I were a hacker, and let's say if I hack your computer, it basically means I have complete remote control of your computer. So without even your permission and without your knowledge, I can access all the data on your computer. I can steal that data. I can destroy that data, delete it from your system permanently. And you would have no clue about it until it's too late. Okay. And all of this can be done by the hacker, again, as mentioned, for his own personal benefit, for his own financial benefit, or just for fun. Okay. So when you talk about hacking, it is a procedure of trying to gain access to information systems. Now, these information systems can be anything. I took the example of a small computer. This will also affect larger organizations and their infrastructures. Again, hackers have in the past attacked large databases or websites and web servers as well. Okay, so this can be performed on any sort of an information system without the permission and without the knowledge of the organization owning those systems. And this is usually performed by hackers for their own benefit. And sometimes hackers are so mischievous, they can even do it just for fun without any financial benefit. Okay. Now, if hacking is such a malicious task, if it is such a criminal activity, why do we have a course called ethical hacking? And how is this getting ethical in the first place? Because ethical is something which is legal, which is allowed, right? So when you talk about ethical hacking, on the other hand, this is the procedure of trying to find vulnerabilities. So this terminology called vulnerability is something that will keep coming across a lot of times in the upcoming sessions. Okay. To define it here itself, it's a loophole, it's a flaw or a weakness in the security of the application or the device. So your job as an ethical hacker is to find these loopholes or vulnerabilities in the information systems. Okay? And once these vulnerabilities are found, you report it back to the company or to the organization so that they can remediate it. They can apply the necessary patches and remove those vulnerabilities. Because these are the same vulnerabilities which hackers use to exploit them and take advantage and get access to your devices. So your job as an ethical hacker is to find these vulnerabilities with the permission, with the consent and knowledge of the organization and report it back so that they are patched up at the earliest. And this patching up would prevent any further cyber threats. Okay. Now, depending on these two definitions of hacking and ethical hacking. Now, we have understood what cyber criminals do and what ethical hackers or cyber professionals do. Okay. But there's one more category as well. So when you talk about the complete list of categories of hackers, there are three categories. There's someone known as a white hat hacker, a gray hat hacker, and a black hat hacker. Your black hat hackers are your typical cyber criminals who perform hacking for their own benefit or for fun without asking for consent. So these are the cyber criminals, I would say. On the other end of the spectrum, we have the good guys, which are the ethical hackers or white hat hackers. So white hat hackers are people who abide by the laws and policies of the organization, and they work for securing the organization's infrastructure from various cyber threats. And in between now, there's a third mysterious category called gray hat hackers. Now, these are the people who have both the qualities of black hat as well as white hat combined. So, like a black hat hacker, they don't ask for permission first. They don't take, again, they do not follow all the rules and regulations that the company might put up. But once they do find the vulnerability, rather than misusing it, they would report it back to the company like a white hat hacker. But again, there's this minor catch. They won't do it for free. They do it in return for a bounty. A bounty is like a financial reward they expect in return for reporting that vulnerability to the organization, for disclosing it to the organization. So again, they're working both offensively and defensively at various stages. And again, for their own personal benefit itself, for their own financial benefit, but they're not harming the systems in any way. Okay. So for a minor price, they're returning that information regarding the vulnerability to the organization itself. So they're hunting for bugs or vulnerabilities in return for bounty. And therefore, they're also commonly known as bug bounty hunters. Okay, hunting for bugs in return for a small financial reward, or also commonly known as a bounty. Okay. Now, no matter what category of a hacker you talk about here, whether it be black hat hackers or gray hat hackers or white hat hackers, they perform hacking or ethical hacking in a certain procedure. And that procedure is the same, which is followed in every organization in the world as well. Okay. And that procedure is commonly called as cyber kill chain. Some organizations also refer to this as hacking cycle. So these terms can be used interchangeably. Okay. To define it, it is a procedure that hackers follow to perform a successful cyber attack. Okay. And the same knowledge of this procedure also allows cyber security professionals, which are your ethical hackers, to understand how these attacks are being performed, to detect these attacks at the earliest stage possible, and prevent them at every level of the organization. So unless and until you know how the attacks can be performed, you would never know how to defend what kind of attacks and which type of attacks. Okay. So understanding ethical hacking involves a lot of your time being spent on understanding how hacking is performed. Okay. So if you want to act as a security for an organization, you need to know what loopholes exist in the first place and how you can basically exploit those loopholes. Okay. So a good thief knows what the loopholes are, and a good policeman knows what the thief would usually do for. Okay. So again, cyber kill chain or ethical hacking is the same procedure followed by hackers as well as ethical hackers. Okay. And but this is used in the organizations for our advantage to prevent these cyber threats in today's world. Okay. And your cyber kill chain consists of five important steps. First step is called as information gathering. Second step is called as scanning. Third step is gaining access. Fourth step is maintaining access. And the last step is reporting or clearing traces. Now, these are the same exact five steps that any organizations follow, basically to understand what cyber threats could be possible in their organization and how do you prevent them. Okay. Now, our course also focuses on these five steps itself. Okay, so the entire course would be revolving basically around these five simple steps. Okay, and in today's demo, I'll give you a brief explanation on what each of these steps are one by one. Okay, any questions or doubts up to this point before we progress further? Anyone?
No, sir.
Right, guys. So yeah, let's get into each of these steps one by one so you have a better understanding about the entire course and what topics we'll be covering throughout the entire sessions. Okay. So the first step is called as information gathering. Now, the main agenda for this step, which is also commonly known as reconnaissance or footprinting, is you gather as much data as possible about the target organization. Okay. But an important point to note here is all of this information is obtained passively. What I mean by passively is if I were a hacker or an ethical hacker, I would try to get as much information or data as possible about the organization discreetly without making any contact with the organization, without letting them know. Again, without giving them any hints, I'll try to get as much data as possible. That's what passively means. Okay. So all of this data is obtained from mostly third-party services or third-party websites on the internet. Okay. So there's a lot of websites on the internet which can give you information about a lot of organizations. Right? So what we'll be using is those websites itself in this phase. Okay. But the main question that arises here is what kind of data you're searching for. And this here is the data as follows. So as an ethical hacker or a hacker, these pieces of information are very crucial for you to obtain during the information gathering phase. And believe it or not, all of this data is readily available for any organization. Nothing illegal. This information is given out by the organization itself. But again, it's scattered across the internet. So we'll be learning what those tools are, what those websites are, from where you can collect all that data from one single place. Okay. So there, again, when you talk about information required, what data you need to gather, we need the IP addresses or the group of IPs belonging to the organization, which is also commonly known as network blocks. Then we need the who's records, giving you information on who's hosting the website for them, then the DNS records, then the domains and subdomains, operating system information, employee details, contact numbers of the employees, email addresses of the employees, and usernames and passwords. Now, believe it or not, all of this information is readily available on the internet. The only thing is you need to know what those websites are, what those gold mines are, and how do you access those gold mines of information. Okay. And now moving on to the next phase, after we have performed information gathering and after we have obtained all this data is now utilized in the upcoming stages. So the next phase is called as scanning, which is also commonly known as enumeration. Okay. So I'm listing out the different names as well, guys, because different companies use different terminologies for the same processes sometimes. Okay. So that might seem a bit confusing. Okay. So I'm just trying to again explain you all what different terminologies might be used, okay, from different organizations. So now when you talk about scanning, this is the phase where you basically try to get some extra data, but by making active connections. Earlier we got the data passively. Here we get the data actively. So whatever IPs you obtain, whatever domains you obtain, whatever subdomains you might have obtained, whatever email addresses you might have obtained, all of those are now used to make direct connections on them. And you get some extra data. So to understand what data we get here, we can break down scanning in three parts. There's something called as network scanning, port scanning, and vulnerability scanning. In network scanning, we figure out in the organization how many devices exist and what kind of devices exist. So basically, let's say if we take any sample organization for that matter, any MNC company, you try to first figure out what type of devices are they using. Are they using any firewalls? Are they using any security measures, intrusion detection systems, intrusion prevention systems? What type of web servers are they using? What type of FTP servers are they using? What other servers are they using? How many client operating system devices are running? So basically, you try to get an internal network topology of the organization. So that is called as network scanning, getting to know how many devices are active in that network. Once you know what devices are active, on those devices, you perform something called port scanning. Port scanning is where you're trying to figure out on those devices what ports are open and what services are running on those ports. Right? So there are multiple different types of services running. There are TCP-based services, UDP-based services. Okay? So we practically try to figure out what services are running on what ports, and again, basically what applications are using those services. Okay. Finally, once you've gotten information on what services and applications are running, you perform something called vulnerability scanning. This is the last phase of scanning where you try to figure out if any of these services or if any of these applications running on the system are vulnerable to any threats. Okay. So during this phase, we'll be using two very important tools, guys. One of them is called as Nmap. If I open up my browser here, just a second. Yeah, so one is called Nmap, which is basically a network and a port scanner, a very popular tool in cybersecurity, asked in a lot of job descriptions. Like it's been there since 1997, quite an old tool, but still used in the latest applications as its source code is still open source. Okay. And the other one is called Tenable Nessus. No, this is not open source, guys. This is a very expensive tool. Okay, and we'll practically be working on this tool as well. This is quite expensive actually. It's around $7,000 or so. Yeah, $7,500. Okay, and that only for 1 year subscription. So this tool is capable of telling you in your organization what different devices exist, and on those devices what services are vulnerable to what sort of attacks. Okay, or what misconfigurations could be existing on your systems. So this can generate automated vulnerability reports, which are used by organizations to perform penetration testing. So we'll practically be learning how do you run vulnerability scanning using these tools. Okay. Once you have got the list of vulnerabilities, next phase is nothing but attacking on those vulnerabilities. That is nothing but your gaining access phase. So here, whatever information was obtained in the earlier phases is utilized by the hacker or the ethical hacker to gain access to the system or the application or the entire network. So you launch attacks here on the organization and try to attack various sorts of devices or services. Okay. And this here is the course content of the gaining access modules. Again, too many topics here, guys. Again, this is one of the core topics of the entire course, I would say. Okay. And again, too many topics here. So many words might seem a bit gibberish, but the main important takeaway here is to understand that we'll be learning how to attack each and every single endpoint. So we talk about system security, we talk about malware attacks, malicious software attacks, we talk about network security, attacks that could be possible in networks, such as sniffing attack, man in the middle attack, denial of service attack, hacking Wi-Fi routers. So all these attacks are used by again in the organizations by hackers to get access to remote data. Okay, so to basically to figure out what data is being sent in the organization, what data is being sent out of the organization, to capture that data. Okay, to overload the servers with huge amounts of traffic and deny their service. Okay, to crack Wi-Fi router passwords. And then social engineering attacks. How do hackers create fake websites and try to steal your credentials? And hacking web servers or web applications. So what vulnerabilities could exist on the front end and on the back end of a web application server? Okay. Then again, vulnerabilities on firewalls or intrusion detection systems or intrusion prevention systems, vulnerabilities on mobile phones. So basically, this phase involves you finding vulnerabilities on each and every endpoint, no matter as small as a mobile phone to as big as a web application server or a database. You try to find vulnerabilities on each and every device. Okay, that's the main agenda of the phase. And during these processes, we perform a lot of different attacks here. Okay, so these attacks might sound a bit gibberish today, but as we progress, we'll learn a lot more in depth on that. Okay. So the main concept over here is you're trying to find vulnerabilities in each and every system, and you're trying to figure out how to remediate them, how to remove those vulnerabilities as well. Okay. And once this is done, you have two last phases: maintaining access and reporting or clearing traces. Okay. So when you talk about maintaining access here, guys, basically once I've hacked into your systems, once I've hacked, let's say, your phone, I need to maintain a persistent connection with that phone. So even if you restart your phone, I should still be connected to you. So that's called a persistent connection. So we'll be learning how do you perform these persistent connections and maintain access to the devices you have exploited or attacked. Okay. And finally comes reporting or clearing cases, where we learn as an ethical hacker how do you generate a report and how do you again report those vulnerabilities to the organization along with the solutions as well to eradicate those vulnerabilities. Or on the other hand, as a non-ethical hacker or cyber criminal, how do you remove the evidences of your actions? So the course will be running in two tracks, guys. We'll be learning the ethical hacking along with the hacking as well. So we learn how to perform these attacks first and how do you remove those again evidences of those attacks. And you also learn as an ethical hacker how do you capture those attacks and try to catch the hacker as well. Okay. So the entire course would be running in those two different formats at the same time simultaneously. Okay. And yeah, that would be the 5 phases of the entire hacking cycle, guys. The entire course is for a duration of 35 days, where we have classes from Monday to Friday, every day for 1 hour each at the same time slot, 8 o'clock. Okay. And I think we have only 2 more demos left out, maybe tomorrow and day after. And after that, we would have the registered full entire course classes. Okay. Although tomorrow we'll be taking the first class on the networking topic. So again, there's a few prerequisites for this course, guys, but luckily they are included in the course itself. I'll explain all the prerequisites myself, and then we dive into the ethical hacking concepts. Okay. So tomorrow's session will be covering basically what is networking, what are IP addresses, what are IPv4 addresses, what are DNS and DHCP protocols. We'll talk about all that first, and then we dive into other cybersecurity concepts. So that would be the session for tomorrow, guys. And yeah, as mentioned, the courses for a duration of 35 days. Where we have classes from Monday to Friday every day for 1 hour each. And you'll be getting these recordings, you'll be getting these presentation files, you'll be getting the documents, the tools, and everything. So you'll be also having a lab simulation on your own system itself. We'll have an exact lab simulation installed on my device and your device, and you can replicate the same attacks or practicals on your system. Okay. So there's a separate class for lab setup installation as well. Okay. So yeah, that concludes our session, a demo session for today, guys. Nothing further. If you have any questions also, you can let me know. Mallikarjun, Mukesh. Hello, guys.
No questions, sorry.
Yes, sir. Sir,
Uh,
actually, I'm confusing regarding that cybersecurity. It's because it's a huge syllabus.
right,
So, as per my knowledge, I have searched like CompTIA security and certified ethical hacker.
right.
So, from that, which on which path we are going forward?
Good question. So again, when you talk about cybersecurity, Mukesh, there are two different. Again, no matter what organization you take in the infrastructure of cybersecurity, there are two departments. One is called as SOC, and one is called as NOC. So the ones you have mentioned, both CompTIA plus security, okay, and the certified ethical hacking. Both of these focus on NOC, Network Operations Center. So figuring out in your organization and the network which devices contain what vulnerabilities and how do you protect your organization from these attacks. When you talk about SOC, that involves something called Security Operations Center Analysis. So you try to analyze the data that is coming in, analyze the data that is going out. So that involves you monitoring. Okay. So analysis of data and finding threats in that data is your SOC. NOC is basically finding vulnerabilities or misconfigurations in the networking devices. In any device, whatever device might exist in the organization, you finding vulnerabilities in them is related to NOC. Okay. And when we talk about the comparison, CompTIA is a much more theoretical course. Okay. And the other one, Certified Ethical Hacking, is from EC Council, which is a much more practical one with real-time examples, hands-on practicals, which are again relevant in today's industry. Okay. So that is why CEH is a much more preferable certification compared to CompTIA. And again, if you prepare for CompTIA, you might not be able to write the CH exam. But if you prepare for CH, you can write CompTIA's exam or CH exam and you'll pass both. Okay. So that's the relevance.
Okay, sir. Thank you.
Any other questions, guys? Okay. Assuming no questions, guys, I think we can disconnect here. And yeah, please do join the session tomorrow. That'll be on networking, the first class of our official courses. And that would give you a much better understanding of how the classes are going on. And if you're interested, you can continue further on from there. Okay. So yeah, that's that. Nothing further, guys. I think we can exit here. Bye-bye. Take care.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. Thank you.